Hello and welcome to the Lost Art Podcast. I'm Garrett and I'm here with Helmet.
That's me, Paul, yeah.
This week, Paul, yeah. This week, we are attempting to do the people behind the music. Something we planned on doing for a long time. It's just been difficult to pick 6 each.
Yeah.
I went through a monstrous list before I kind of decided on these. And to be honest with you, 2 or 3 of them, I'm going to say half of my choices now I'm reevaluating. So we're probably...
I took a while with this one. These are the producers, our favourite producers.
I think we'll have to do a volume 2 of this anyway.
Yeah, because there's some we left out.
Yeah,
like,
loads.
There was ones I wanted to do, like Martin Hannah, for instance, who made the Manchester Sound with Joy Division and stuff like that, who put, like, Stephen Morris from Joy Division up on the roof to assemble his drum kit and told him to play faster but slower. Then there's like Guy Stevens who did London's Calling, and while they were in the rehearsal room in the studio, he was throwing ladders and chairs at them to get that
go
get that aggro out. But I picked my 6.
Yeah, I think the 6 I picked are a good mix of genres and styles.
I did that in terms of my favourite ones.
I don't know if I picked favourite.
That's alright. No, I did it just because it was...
I think half of
I
them
had to try and figure out what my angle was, and I thought, hang on, I'll start with my favourites, because I know there'll be volume 2.
I'll tell you what my problem here is, that I moved to a new notebook, right? So my notebook says Lost Art Book 6. So this is my 6th notebook of things, but it's smaller than the rest of them. And I hate writing on the back of pages.
No, I know what you mean.
I just have a thing about it.
I'd have to draw it in big. I also hate A3?
These are like A3. No, this is like A5, I'd say.
A5, whatever. So, yeah.
And it's just trying to compact it all into it. Let's just get this going, because I'm actually, I seen your list, and I had a quick spin through. I knew my songs, obviously, and I had a spin through your stuff earlier.
Well, if you're looking to the playlist, you wouldn't know who the promoter, the fucking producer.
They're not super obvious.
The producer definitely was, but unless you are mad into knowing about producers. Yeah. But this might be a little bit eye-opening for people who don't know much about...
Your first one that you're going to go into now it's fucking outrageous.
It's mental.
Give me who's your first one?
It's my favourite one, possibly, is Flood. Flood is... and the song I picked is PJ Harvey, Down by the Water.
It's so good.
Flood has done everything I love, most of my favourite bands, and he just seems to not be thrown by anything that's given to him. And I don't know if that's to his approach. Well, I went into the approach on all these a little bit later, but we'll go into just a bit who he is. So Flood is Mark Ellis, who began working at Morgan Studios in London in the late 70s. And he worked as a tape operator on Rick Wakeman's 1984. That was the first time he ever got near an album. Before that, he was just the tea runner, basically, for the studio, running around getting tea. And they called him.
Best one started.
Yeah, that's what he started at, I think, at about 16. And he was called Flood because there was 2 guys who would bring the tea, and one of them would never bring in a lot of tea. He was called Drew. And this guy, Mark Ellis, was called Flood because he'd bring all the tea as fast as people wanted it. This is when the Cure and all were in the...
He flooded them with tea.
Flooded them with tea, yeah. So, his first kind of big thing was in 1980, where he was I think he was the mixing assistant. The assistant mixer.
Assistant engineer.
No, not even that.
Really?
Yeah, the assistant mixer on Movement by New Order, which was a huge album.
Yeah.
He even said it in the thing. He goes, as an 18-year-old, he said that was outrageous, but I'd worked my bollocks off to get there, mixing stuff. That's just the mixing thing. He moved up to that. Assistant mixer as well. He's probably just still on an internship,
100%.
so to speak, yeah. But the mid-90s, he just became the house producer. So in 10 years after that, a little bit later maybe even, he was their house producer, got it from engineer to that. I had to really narrow his list of albums down because it's just insane. Right, Nine Inch Nails, Pretty Hate Machine, Broken, and The Downward Spiral.
Fuck off.
No. Everyone says Trent Reznor. Okay, but not really.
You're not really.
Him. So Pretty Hate Machine, Broken, and The Downward Spiral. The 3 best.
Yeah.
If the rest of your if your final selection was on fire, you'd grab those ones first.
God, absolutely.
U2, Zeropa, Pop, and How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb. That won Grammy. He shared a Grammy with U2 over that, and that was produced in Dublin and Berlin, I think.
Was that Grouse or Windmill?
Would have been Windmill, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, not even. No, it was.
No, they bought Windmill, didn't they?
Yeah. So on Wiki, it just says Hanover Key.
Yeah, that's Windmill.
So that's Windmill, but the rest of them say Windmill, and so whatever. It's just, PJ Harvey, To Bring You My Love, which is this album, White Chalk, and Let England Shake. Smashing Pumpkins, Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness.
Really?
Yeah. Weirdly,
Fucking hell.
The production on that, to me, I've always had a bit of a weird problem with.
I think it's very dated, but...
No, I think it's because when you have a budget and you have a double album, you can't get everything to sound... You probably, you know what I mean? But
some have to be banged out. Like.
For a double album, it sounds incredible.
Yeah.
He did Machine It as well.
Did he?
Yeah. He did arguably my favourite. I can't argue with myself, can I?
Fighting with me.
Depeche Mode, Songs of Fate and Devotion, to me, is as good as Violator.
Yeah.
He also worked on Violator, but he wasn't the producer. That also must have been a fucking nightmare to deal with Depeche Mode during the
that
Songs
era.
of Fate and Devotion era, yeah. Nick Cave, The Boatman's Call, and most recently, the Murder Capital album.
Really?
Yeah. Where the fuck did they get the money for Flood?
Off a fucking...
Relative.
Someone with a 20 million
So,
euro.
obviously, the Murder Capital have had, an angle there. So they have a... For Warner, is it?
All I can tell you is about the Murder Capital. We've talked about them.
No problem with someone.
They're very good.
If someone launches with, they're not, what do you call them, the thrills.
No.
Where they launch with a whole load of money and a plan and a
Pizza
record
money,
label already. At least the Murder Capital are good. So I don't care how someone gets there anymore, really. I'm just romantic idea of people playing basements for 10 years before they get a little break. I don't care
We're
anymore.
past that now.
Yeah.
Let's be brutally honest. We're past that now.
He's also acted as an engineer or mixer for Soulwax, Tom Jones, Goldfrapp,
goddamn.
Pizza Reb, Pop Will Eat Itself, Jesus and Mary Chain, Erasure, Gary Newman, Sigur Rós, The Killers, and Orbital.
Fucking hell. Sweating. That lad is sweating music out.
He was one of the biggest, his first huge breakthrough as a producer. He was actually only the co-producer because U2 used multiple producers for their albums. So it was Achtung Baby, which is one of the best sounding albums and groundbreaking albums, to be honest with you, in rock. And he was introduced to Depeche Mode by Anton Corbijn, who's is a Belgian photographer that does all Joy Division's black and white stuff and Depeche Mode stuff. He's basically the flood of photographers. That guy has a list like floods of things. So I'll go in basically to his style is very hard to kind of put down because anytime he's asked in interviews, I tried to pinpoint it all week, and he was like, I take an idea that the band has and I try and see what the best way to do that is. And I won't fight with them, but I'll try and push them into doing it that way. Basically harness their ideas. I won't run them through my mechanisms.
Your mechanisms, yeah.
Because that's not what he does. There's a lot of producers that do that. An interesting question during an interview that I watched just before I left because I wanted to write this down. Someone said to him, "Do you know when you're working on a seminal album?" That's a really, really good question. He goes, about 3/4 of the way through it, you'll know when you're working on an album that hasn't been done before, sonically or musically, or an album that isn't trying to be something else. I thought that was kind of interesting because he knows. He said he admitted to himself. He said he's worked on about 4 seminal albums. I think he's worked on way more than that. But that's what he admitted. He's a very kind of.
Well, you have to assume that most of these guys are super critical in their work as well.
Absolutely, yeah. But he just says, "Look, I make the band happy. I make sure." I reckon what he means is he makes them think those ideas were theirs, which is what you have to do with bands. So, Flood. If I had to get an album produced, it would be by Flood, or somebody. I've another person coming up who worked with Flood a lot.
Yeah.
And his influences would have been Brian Eno. Brian Eno is an influence on 2 of the guys that come
I'd say, to be fair, Brian Eno is probably an influence on most of the people going to come up in this list.
And music, and weirdly, Bono comes up 3 or 4 times.
Really?
In this. Yeah, he's got fucking fingers and a lot of poise when it comes to engineers. But he always went for the best engineers.
The song you picked is fucking wonderful. Like,
he's able to mix sonically and tightly.
Yeah.
Guitars, synths, and samples, and even electronic stuff. Like, it's nothing to him.
I had a bang at this earlier because I remember this song.
Yeah. It's the first big PJ Harvey song that I remember.
And I put the headphones on, literally 8 hours ago. Put the headphones on, I played it, and I was like, fuck me, like there's so much going on, but he spaced everything out.
That's my kind of team with my producers I've picked. Layered, luscious layers, but everything has a space.
Yeah, that's it. Everything has its own little Lego block.
Space, and it's not tripping over itself.
No, nothing's tripping over. It's fucking wonderful.
That's Flood. Who's your first one?
My first one is super famous, probably not even super famous these days for being a producer. It's Jimmy, either Iovine or Iovine.
Iovine, I think it is, yeah.
I always say Iovine, but it's spelled Iovine.
Yeah.
And, okay, so...
He's such an influential guy, even there's a couple of other producers here that are great at putting people together.
Yeah.
He's a businessman and
like, okay, I found out an awful lot of stuff about Jimmy Iovine here that I did not know. He's born in 1953 in Brooklyn. So at age 19, he drops out of college. And he decides, I'm really into music. Like, his parents had, like, absolute menial jobs. They were fucking nobodies, really. In terms of work. So he decides at 19, I want to get into music. I really like listening to music. I think I can write music. So what am I going to do? He gets a job, cleaning a recording studio.
That's a mad start, actually, yeah.
In the early 70s. So by the kind of mid 70s, all of a sudden he's like an assistant sound engineer in the studio. And he's working with John Lennon, he's working with Bruce Springsteen, a place called the Record Plant. And he's sitting in on all these sessions. So eventually he just gets to know these guys and he becomes kind of friendly with them to the point where he starts introducing them to other artists who are probably going to write songs or are producing songs or are big name artists in themselves.
Yeah.
His big title that kind of made him famous was Patti Smith, Because the Night.
Yeah.
Right? We could go into, there's an entire podcast about Because the Night by Patti Smith. We're not going to do it.
And where it came from.
Yeah, and where it came from.
Who wrote it.
Yeah, exactly. But Because the Night by Patti Smith and the album that's off is the one that properly kind of catapults him into the stratosphere. He ends up producing Belladonna by Stevie Nicks. And
That's
around this
right.
time, he actually gets into a relationship with Stevie Nicks. He starts going out with her. And
Fleetwood Mac, you're probably going to have sex with someone in Fleetwood Mac.
Pretty much.
If you're in the music industry.
Exactly.
No
Now,
offense to Fleetwood Mac.
as much as we could do a podcast about Patti Smith and Jimmy Iovine, we could do 4 podcasts about Jimmy Iovine and Patti Smith. About Stevie Nicks. There's a whole big hullabaloo about hiding fucking Stevie Nicks in a wardrobe while somebody else plays a song that it's a clusterfuck of. He is essentially the Del Boy of music.
Yeah, he puts people together. He goes,
100%.
he hear a song and go, you know what, can I give it to someone? They'll be like, yeah, whatever, man. Makes it into a mega hit. I'm sure they're like, yeah, cunt. How wouldn't you make me a mega hit? Well, because I'm not your fucking producer.
Exactly. He takes songs that nobody else wants and realises that this song is going to work perfectly well with another artist.
Yeah.
So he gets the rights to this song of somebody that nobody wants and gives it to somebody and turns it into a fucking top 10 hit. This is his skill. I only found this out as well. He was a sound engineer on the Voyager Golden records. So the records that were sent into space to try and contact aliens. He was the sound engineer on.
Did we mention that before?
We did talk about that before, yeah. And the Voyager was a whole big thing. They recorded loads of classical music with modern symphonies.
Yeah.
And they pressed them onto these. They were made of gold LPs that could be played. There was no, like, tape machines were a thing, but they weren't commonplace. LPs were the format of the time. So they made records out of gold because they would last for thousands of years.
Yeah.
And they put them onto the Voyager satellites and sent them out into space. You can play them, yeah.
Wreck your needle, surely.
No, it'd be diamond tipped. You get away with it.
Right.
Not for long, but yeah, you could play them. So he was a sound engineer on these fucking sessions.
Because gold discs that you see given out to people are obviously not gold.
No, they're just
gold
spray
plated.
painted. Yeah.
Spray part.
They'd be, what they call it? Gilding, is it?
Gilded.
Gold gilded, yeah. So he was the producer. Sorry, not producer. He was the sound engineer on these Voyager things that were sent into space. Okay, so things start getting real spicy in 1990. So he's after working with a shit ton of artists. I'm going to go through a bunch of artists that he worked with now in a second, but I need to just do like 1990 up to kind of 2000-ish. Just to get you an idea of how important this guy is. So in 1990, he co-founds Interscope Records.
Yeah,
right.
It's a huge
one. One of the first people he signs is Tupac. Now, around this time, he funds Death Row Records. I did not know this. I did not know that Jimmy Iovine was the money behind Death Row Records. Right? Death Row Records apparently was a subsidiary of Interscope. I had no idea. I always thought, my entire life, the Death Row was just its own thing.
Why do I feel like I did know that? Is it not written on the back of the Death Row CDs?
Couldn't tell you.
I think it is.
It might be now. It might be now, but I don't think it was back then.
Yeah.
My entire life, I always considered Death Row to be fully independent.
That was a link, actually.
Now I know I seen it in that there's a documentary on HBO documentary. It's now on Netflix called The Defiant Ones.
Oh,
it's
so good.
It's amazing.